Catabolic comes first because that's the starvation state. That's the low energy state. You know we got to start there because there's that 98% of illnesses. All right? So let's just pretend you have not eaten, even though we all just came back from lunch. All right, this is what your body was doing before you went to eat. This is what your body does anytime it's deficient in energy. It has to break things down. That's what catabolic means. Everybody with me? All right. Again, the key is the big picture. Breaking it down, man. Now you know that's what we do. Sources of energy, once again, glucose, proteins, fats, and ketones. We've gone through the timeline and sequence of all of this. We say fats last the longest. But glucose is the most readily available and easiest to mobilize. Glucose is the most readily available and is the easiest to mobilize. Why? Because glucose is soluble. What does that mean when I say soluble, Ferdy? Hard to get into the cell. When I say soluble, that's soluble in water or fat. So water soluble, which means your plasma can mobilize it very quickly. Everybody understand? Remember, fat repels water, so it's hard to mobilize fat. And now you just learned carbon-carbon bonds that are hardest to ever involve in a reaction. So fat just sticks around for a long time. Okay? Well, because glucose is the easiest to mobilize, that's why we say that 40% of your diet should be glucose. Everybody understand that? All right? The larger proportion should be the one that's used the most. All right, as far as calories, they tell you glucose and proteins are worth 4 calories per gram. Fats are worth 9. So again, fats provide the most energy over time. So your body has so many reasons why once you accumulate fat, it's going to have a hard time getting rid of it. Okay? But that's why you got to exercise regularly if you want to get rid of it. I'm going to show you during our talk how exercise physiology will help you burn off anything you want to burn off. Breaking down sugars first. Breaking down sugar starts with glycolysis. Glycolysis is the most active process in your body. Glycolysis is the most active pathway in your body. Glycolysis is the only catabolic process that goes on completely in the cytoplasm. Because Diana remembers from our previous talk, anytime you want to break things down, do we do it in the cytoplasm or mitochondria? Subconscious says what? Do it in mitochondria. So if you want to break things down, remember electron transport is in there. So you want to feed it so you get the ATP from there. So that's how to remember. If you want to break anything down, say mitochondria. If you want to make anything, we say cytoplasm. Except glycolysis was the only purely catabolic pathway going on completely in the cytoplasm. And then, PJ, I told you there were 3 pathways that go on in both compartments. The 3 pathways are gluconeogenesis, urea cycle, and heme synthesis. Heme synthesis. All right? Everybody remember that. That's a very big picture. You know, metabolic rules, the rules of metabolism in your body. It doesn't change in any human being. That's why they want you to know that. Okay? So glycolysis. Now look at how your body uses energy. Look at how your body uses energy, Dan. Your brain uses glucose under normal conditions. Your heart uses free fatty acids under normal conditions. Your muscles use glucose under normal conditions. RBCs use glucose under normal conditions as well. If you get stressed, your brain stays with glucose. The heart, however, will switch to glucose from fatty acids. The muscles will switch to fatty acids. RBCs stay with glucose. Under extreme stress, the brain will eventually switch to ketones. The heart stays with glucose. Muscles stay with fatty acids. And the RBCs stay with glucose. That means if ever your body gets stressed, if ever you miss out on glucose, if ever you don't eat enough glucose, if ever you can't store enough glucose, arrows, what cells in your body will be affected first by that diagram? Nope. Katia. The RBCs, they cannot switch away from glucose, arrows. The RBCs are the only tissues that cannot switch away from glucose. That means if you have a glucose problem, I don't care how you got it, Jennifer, the RBCs will be the first to feel it. If the RBCs don't have any glucose, guess what? They'll start hemolyzing right away. So now, we already know low energy state. Now I'm adding labs. That's how you know anytime there's a glucose problem, hemolytic anemia comes first. See that? That way, in case they ask you to explain jaundice, now you know why. See that? Explain anemia, now you know why. Manny. That's just a response to hypoglycemia because it's a stress. Okay? But here, this is the cells. What are they going to do when you have low glucose? RBCs cannot switch away from glucose. RBCs depend on glucose for energy to maintain the sodium potassium pump. And then they depend on pentose pathway for NADPH to repair their membranes. That's the only two pathways available in an RBC. For that reason, the RBCs are stuck. That means anytime you have a glucose problem, Tony, how long does your plasma glucose last? 2 to 4 hours. How long does liver glycogen last, Tony? 24 to 28 hours, not 48. 24 to 28 hours. That means by the middle of the second day, you're completely out of glucose. You understand that, Tony? You understand that, Katia? You understand that, Nicole? You understand that, Nita? You understand that, Frank? This is the reason why, folks, if ever you are short of glucose, guess what? You have 2 days before you're in trouble. Does everybody understand where the 2 days came from? You don't have any more glucose by the end of the second day. Look in your books right now and tell me why every sugar problem in babies, in Robbins, they say presents within 48 hours of failure to thrive. And they say there's no biochemistry out there. If you mess with glucose, folks, you got 48 hours before you get in trouble. Maximum. That's why they come in failure to thrive, 48 hours. If you dilute a baby's milk, 48 hours, they're in the hospital, failure to thrive. Anytime you're messing with glucose, folks, a baby's got 2 days. Okay? All right, so now, everybody understand that part so far? All right, now let me show you about exercise physiology. That means, let's say, Diana. That means if you want to burn fat off your body, okay, let's say, that means you want to make sure the heart is burning off fat and the muscles are burning off fat. Does everybody see that? Does everybody see that for real? All you got to do is say, who's burning the fat? There it is right there. Well, that means, Diana, that you want to keep your heart in the normal condition and the muscles you want to stress. Does everybody see that? This is what they mean. You hear it on all the infomercial. Maximum fat burning, whatever. See that, folks? We can calculate what heart rate you need to have maximum fat burning. That's what they're talking about. Okay, whether it's an ab rocket or bottom rocket, butt rocket, I don't know. All these doggone machines, they're selling for $19.95. You know, just send me your $19.95, we'll send it to you. Okay, fine. That's all they're doing. Their target heart rate is the average heart rate that a person needs to burn off a lot of fat. Now, have you ever wondered why you see the elderly walking around the tracks and they're always checking their pulse? They're always checking their pulse. Why? Because the doctor told them where to keep it. Have you ever wondered why, after a heart attack, we start walking them down the hallway? If you want to burn off the fat out of their body, folks, you got to exercise them. You got to stress them. So, the rule is to maintain what we call aerobic exercise. If you got aerobic exercise, your heart stays normal and your muscles get stressed out. Aerobic exercise is also known as isotonic exercise. That means the same tone on a muscle, but change the length many times. The other side of it is called isometric exercise. That means take a whole lot of weight, put it on the muscle, but don't change the length that many times. Isometric is weightlifting. You take a weightlifter, and he takes 300 pounds, bench presses that sucker. What's he do? Maybe 5 reps. That's it. But you learn from muscle phys. When does muscle burn ATP, Melanie? When it contracts or when it releases? when it releases. So that means, everybody understand that, right? So that means the more times I make the muscle release, does everybody see you will burn off more ATP? 5 reps is not it. So the weightlifter swears he can do 5 reps of 300. He feels good. He thinks he's in better shape than you are. Everybody understand? Then you have the little aerobics instructor, a little skinny woman up at the front. What does she do? She's a miracle, miracle. But she's doing that for 45 minutes. That's one of my favorite movies, Flashdance, man. I got to admit it. I watched that thing so many times. So I just got sick of it. I watched it a ton of times. But anyway, that was the epitome of aerobic exercise. Because she's up there changing the length of her muscles so often per minute that by the end of exercise, she's burnt off more calories than their weightlifter. That's why you see the weightlifter. He's got big muscles, doesn't he? But there's a lot of fat in that muscle. He thinks just because it's big, he's in better shape. The aerobics instructor, you see how thin she is, right? Solid muscle. Nothing but muscle. But no fat on that woman. Hardly any fat on her at all. Here's the other side of things. What also goes wrong? If you got big old muscles, then that means the artery that goes through that muscle is being compressed by that muscle. So everybody see that? What's happening to your total peripheral resistance, Kathy? It's increasing. And that's why weightlifters still end up with hypertension and still die faster. See that? So they think they're in shape. Yeah, you're in shape for a little while, but you're cutting your life short. That's why their heart hypertrophies, because you got too much resistance for the heart to pump against. Versus the aerobics instructor. She's changing the length of muscle so often that all our arterioles have to open up to nourish all those muscles. Everybody see the point here? That means a lot more arterioles in parallel with the system. See that? So her total peripheral resistance is dropping with exercise. That's why we try to teach patients this fact, because that way, especially if you had an MI, I don't want you thinking, oh, let me go pump 300 pounds. That'll get me in shape, because that's not it. But they know you've been hearing that from your friends. That means if you, the doctor, don't understand the difference, you perpetuate that. And then they'll think, yeah, I go to the weight room once a week, but I pump 300 pounds. Well, I mean nothing. I'd rather you carry 2 pounds and do it 100 times. Everybody see? That way it's no stress, doesn't hurt you, but you are burning fat. All right, so how do I maintain the heart in this aerobic range? Don't let the heart rate go beyond 40 to 70% of maximum heart rate. So if your heart rate, maximum heart rate is 200, because you're a 20-year-old, you take 40% of that and 70% of that, and that's the range they should keep their heart. So if you go to any of these health food stores, they'll help you calculate the maximum fat-burning heart rate for you. That's all you got to do, but you can calculate yourself. 40 to 70% of maximum heart rate will keep you in aerobic range. If you do that, your heart stays in the normal range, your muscles get stressed. Well, Miguel, you know how long it takes to stress out your muscles? About 30 minutes. Diana, how long do they tell you ought to exercise every time you exercise? Oh, about 30 minutes. Gee, I wonder where they got that number from. Folks, that's how long it takes to stress out your muscles. Because I got to stress them for maximum fat burn. Everybody see that? But physicians just quote that, oh, exercise for 20 or 30 minutes. But if the patient asks why, no explanation. Well, that's just what we always recommend. No, you got to explain why so that the person understands it. When they understand it, guess what? They're more likely to exercise for 30 minutes. Yes?
Does it burn more when you leave a muscle tense or when you tense and relax?
Yeah, tense and relax is the key thing. Remember, it's relaxation that burns up the ATP. The more times you relax, the more ATP you start burning off. And that way your body is forced to mobilize fats. Everybody understand? Cool? Well, that means if you want to burn off maximum fat, and we understand how to figure out the heart rate. Well, here's the second half of it. If you want to burn off the maximum fat, not only do you want your heart rate in that range, Kathy, I want to exercise the area that burns off the most fat. Well, Kathy, You look at this diagram and you tell me, do you have more heart or do you have more muscles? You have more muscles, she says. And then I ask you again, Kathy, what's the biggest muscle in your body right now? What's the biggest muscle on your body? You just said skeletal muscle was bigger. So you can't go back to the heart. So I'm saying, what's the biggest muscle in your body right now? Let's see if Elvis knows. It's called gluteus maximus. Folks, have you ever wondered why every doggone exercise is about exercising gluteus maximus? Oh, I could swear it's biochemistry. Check that out. Biggest muscle in your body. That means if you stress it out over a long period of time, you're going to burn off the most fat. See that? That's why you listen to infomercials. All you got to do is buy, remember the first one that came out? The stepper. I went to stepping class one time. The stepper says, yeah, climb stairs. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, I said, yeah, I got rhythm. I started jazzing it up and everything. Yeah, baby. Yeah. Well, I went to the class, right? 3 little old ladies and me. I'm like, I got this, man. I got this. So the music starts. It always starts out slowly. So you think, yeah, I got this. Little old ladies huffing and puffing. I got it. Till the music starts speeding up. And I'm like, let me see. Oh, yeah, that's right. This way. This way. Man, them little old ladies were keeping up with the beat. Man, after a while, I didn't know where the hell anybody was. I'm like, turning around in circles. I missed the beat every time. I mean, halfway through, I took off my headband. I said, I quit. Walked out, man. The class ended with 3 little old ladies. I never went back either. Well, so that's why now in the infomercials, what do they tell you? Send us $19.95, and we'll send you the steps. 2 little plastic steps. And then we'll send you DVDs so you can play music. I think I got my own music. Why do I got to need yours? But anyway, hey, get the steps. You send me your $19.95, I become a millionaire. By the time you figure out, I'm a millionaire already. And then you suddenly realize, hey, wait a minute, don't I got steps going upstairs? Don't I got steps going downstairs? Damn it, why did I just spend $19.95 on 2 stairs? Too late, I'm a millionaire already. That's why nobody buys the stairs, those steppers anymore. They realize you got steps in the house, and yet you're sending somebody money. Now, you got to realize the whole scam to marketing. They do a lot of research to figure out what will fool you subconsciously. Because when you ask people things, they consciously lie. We know that. So they try to figure out what's going on in your subconscious. Well, they did some research to figure out what's the largest denomination as far as money that people will spend without realizing they've actually spent money. $20 bill. You ever wonder why everything is $19.95? Folks, there's a reason for that. Because you can part with $19.95 and not even know you just spent $20. If you ask somebody, how much was that thing? Oh, only 19 bucks. It's $19.99, but you ask them, how many 19 bucks. They didn't even realize they just spent 20 bucks. But they say $19. But that's why they always make it right around that point. Now, you got to understand why they say rush now. And if you call now in the next 8 minutes, how the heck do they know when the 8 minutes began? I'm watching in the middle of the night, I see it in the evening. It's always call now in the next 8 minutes, and we'll give you 10% off. Because here's the deal. All they want to do is get hold of your credit card. If they get a hold of your credit card, you know how many people never take notice of that bill going through every month? They've got you locked in. They've got you locked in. And you can cancel anytime you want. You know what cancellation means? You have to call us within 30 days and cancel. How many folks remember to even call and cancel an order within 30 days? They never do. 99% of people don't do it. And now they got your credit card locked into a bill. And then that bill goes through every month. You don't even notice. You keep paying that $19.85. Now, you got things like Bowflex. You got all these machines come out. Well, let me just go through the whole sequence. They had the stepper, right? And then everybody gave up when they learned they had steps. Then they came out with the slide. I got the slide, dun, 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 slide, dun, dun, dun. Notice they're all working out the glutes, right? They don't let you know that's what they're doing. The glutes, dun, dun, dun. Send me $19.95, and I'll send you a piece of saran wrap. I could have sworn I got saran wrap in my kitchen. But I got to send you $19.95 for it now. By the time you figure out you just been scammed, that's all right, I'm a millionaire already. And then everybody gave up on it. And then what did they do? They came up with remember the easy glider, you know, all that stuff. Remember that? Notice, it's gluteus. Most people don't even notice that. It's exercising the same muscle. Gluteus. If you work it out, guess what? You burn off the most fat. Everybody understand? All right. All the machines you see, ab rocker, this rocker, that rocker, this, folks, they're all working the gluteus maximus. That's why even when you look at Tai Bo, Tai Chi, Chi Bo, I don't even know. They're all working the gluteus, man. Look at all the kicking they do. Where are you kicking from? The gluteus. Nobody notices. It's the same old biochemistry going on. That's all it is. And that's why then people lose their fat, and then they get on and testify, oh, I lost so much. I lost 41 pounds. I lost 57 pounds. Okay, fine. Happy for you. Let me tell you something else that'll happen afterwards, though. All right, so first of all, does everybody understand this part here? When you're teaching your patients, 40 to 70% maximum heart rate, that's where you want to stay. And you want to work out on your gluteus maximus. Okay? Now, they tell you that everybody has one bad reason why they are fat or overweight. Everybody has one bad habit that made you fat or overweight. For doctors, for me, it was eating at the wrong time. Like most physicians, I worked all day. I was so busy with students, I wasn't even thinking about eating. And then, of course, when I leave here, go home, now I'm hungry as all heck. And then I just eat whatever my wife cooked, and then what happens? You get sleepy, and you go to bed. That's the worst thing you can do. And although I've only eaten one meal a day, guess what? You're still going to be overweight. Everybody follow that? Bad habit. That's why most physicians are overweight, okay? Now, medical students, what's your bad habit? You're up studying late at night, and GABA says, close your eyes and go to bed. You say, no, I want to study. Okay, go ahead and study. But GABA says, hey, didn't Dr. Francis tell you, you can't override GABA? But you say, no, I am strong. I am woman. I am man. I can override GABA. But what's it going to take? Doritos, Ritz crackers, Red Bull, pizza at 2 o'clock in the morning, and all the other junk that medical students eat. And yet when you ask them, well, how much do you eat each day? I only eat a small meal. They forgot all that other junk they ate during the night trying to keep themselves awake. They don't even count that as a meal. Folks, bad habit. That's why in medical school, first year, most M1 students, you go there, first couple weeks, you know people make their hair, got makeup on, fellas dress sharp, trying to impress the women. That's only for the first 2 weeks. Then afterwards, you realize, man, hey, that's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, precious time. I can get some reading done. When you realize how much work you got to do in medical school, you're like, I ain't got no time to be doing my hair. After 2 weeks, you see everybody start looking crazy now, don't you? You know, all of a sudden, nobody cares about looking good for anybody. 20 minutes is too much. And then, when you start with all the bad habits, what happens? You then start to suffer from that bad M1 disease that almost everybody gets. You know what it's called? It's called gluteus maximus spreaditis. That means your butt starts to spread out and take up a lot more room. Why do you think most M1s, after a while, start wearing sweatsuits? Yeah, we know what's up, because the belly starts hanging, so you figure, let me wear a sweatsuit, nobody can see it. The butt starts spreading. You're like, well, if I wear sweatpants, nobody will see that either. Then you come into class, half the class got sweatsuits on. And they were just trying to hide how big they become. That's the problem. That's the bad habit that most medical students have. So that's why when somebody's overweight, you need to sit down with them and do a real detailed history of what they do all day long. You will find that bad habit somewhere in there. Because if you just say, how much do you eat? They'll tell you, oh, I don't eat that much. I just ate a burger for lunch. But then they ate some chips, some crackers, some all that stuff in between. You got to sit down with them and then teach them. And you got to do it a nice way, because nobody likes to be called fat. You got to say, well, everybody has a reason why they're overweight. I always like to cite myself, because I used to be pretty chunky myself. I say, hey, here's the bad habit I had. I had to figure out that's what it was and stop eating late at night, okay? Because if you let yourself get hungry and then it's nighttime, that is not the thing to do. You're going to override it and eat it, and then boom, fall off to sleep. Remember you got the hunger center, lateral hypothalamus? You learned, right? Satiety center, medial hypothalamus, right? What does it respond to? Number one is glucose. Satiety, high glucose. Hunger, low glucose. Everybody understand that? Okay. So that means if you want to lose weight, the key is not to let the hunger center fire. Does everybody understand that? That means do not let your blood sugar dip too low. The best way to eat sensibly, that's why I never call it a diet. I don't believe in diets. Eat sensibly is to eat 4 to 6 small meals a day. When I started doing that, the weight started coming out. I said, oh my goodness. You know, so before I leave the house at 5 o'clock, I eat. When we get done at 9 o'clock, I always have like, you know, some fruit and some stuff in my refrigerator. I eat. I eat lunch at noon. I eat after we get done at 4 o'clock, and then I eat again at 7 or 8 o'clock. But all of a sudden, I'm eating very small meals and not that many calories. Whereas before, I was eating 1 meal a day, but at 8, 9, 10 o'clock, and then fall straight to sleep, and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay? That's why you got to teach people that, and then they understand it. Then they see what you're talking about, and then they're more likely to follow along with you. Because otherwise, in your hypothalamus, we have something called a weight thermostat. Let's say you're at 150 pounds. Then that thermostat in your hypothalamus says, okay, there, I got you, 150, cool. You feel good. And then you gain 10 pounds, 160 pounds. You see how tight your pants are? Ooh, I feel uncomfortable, man. That's because the hypothalamus said, you going to stay up here? All right, I'll come up to meet you. And then, hey, feel comfortable again. All right, everything's cool. And then you gain 10 more pounds, 170 pounds. Hypothalamus say, man, how you going to go? All right, I'll come meet you. Now you feel comfortable again. Every time you get larger, once your hypothalamus meets you, you feel comfortable again. Okay, fine. And then you want to lose weight. The hypothalamus measures differences in the thermostat and your body weight. That means if you do a crash diet and do this, you see that? You set too much of a gap. The hypothalamus sets off hunger signals like you wouldn't believe. And then here comes the hunger signal. Nope, I'm on a diet. I'm not going to eat that. Next week, here comes the hunger signal, getting stronger. Nope, I'm on a diet. I'm not going to eat that. Okay, here comes the third week. And then here comes the food again. No, I can't eat that, man. I can't eat that. I've lost 12 pounds. I got to stay on my diet. And then, shoot, about the third or fourth week, that signal is so strong, and you just happen to be passing the buffet, $2.99, all you can eat, bring your friend with you, and then you just attack and dive into that buffet. And then your thermostat never came down. And then right back up here. See that? That's why yo-yo diets, folks, are no good. But what do you see in the supermarket? Suzanne Summers lost 7 pounds. How to lose 7 pounds in 1 week? How to lose 10 pounds in 1 week? How to lose 30 pounds in 2 months? Man, crazy diets, folks. They all work. Sure, you lose it. But your hypothalamus is not coming down. Your hypothalamus say right here, you come down, sets off signals, you'll rebound. You don't believe me? Allow me to demonstrate, man. Have you ever noticed that the spokesperson for Slim Fast is always different every year? Gee, let me see why the last one gained all his weight back and then some. And they send it right off the camera. Remember the first one? Tommy Lasorda came up there. Look at me, I'm slim and trim. I lost that kind of weight. Ta-da! At the end of the year, boom. Tommy, you got to get off the screen, man. Get out. Then Dan Deerdorf came out there and said, look at me, I lost 51 pounds. I feel great. Everything, at the end of the year, boom. Oh, Dan, you got to get off the screen. And then, what's his name? Sherry Belafonte came out there. Look at me, I'm so slim. I got my bikinis on. I can fit my bikinis. At the end of the year, boom, boom, boom. No, get off. Man, gain all the way back and then some. That's because the hypothalamus, when you create too much of a gap, hypothalamus thinks you're dying. When you create too much of a gap, hypothalamus thinks you are dying. And that means when it makes you go on an eating binge, brings you back up here, says, shoot, I better add a little extra, man, trying to kill somebody up in there. That's the message you're sending your hypothalamus when you lose too much weight too fast. So what do we teach people? Don't lose any more than 2 to 3 pounds per week. That's after years of studies, they found out that the gap the hypothalamus will not respond to is within 1 to 3 pounds. Anything more than that, signals begin. That's why they say 2 to 3 pounds per week. And that's important to let people know because they're more attracted to crash diets because they think, oh, I want to lose it real fast. So they want to get the one that Suzanne Summers was on. They want to get the one that this star was on. They want to get the one that loses 20 pounds in 3 days. Well, folks, guaranteed you're going to gain it back. So then they say in the evening. So again, a shake in the morning, a shake in the afternoon, then in the evening you eat a sensible dinner. If you look at the picture of the sensible dinner, has anybody got a good look at this thing? It's a chunk of beef about that big. And it's got 2 asparaguses on the sides like that. So it waves like palm trees. You say, great, sensible. Sensible, man, get out of here. You know the Slim Fast diet is about 1,200 calories per day. Sure, you lose weight because you're starving to death. 200 calories, man, 1 cheeseburger, you've already got the 1,200 calories. That's why it's just not a good diet, okay? The key is sensible eating, sensible eating. You know, people think, you know, if you make a lot of money, then you go eat at the best restaurant. Nah. Let me tell you why. I ain't wasting money in no expensive restaurant where I don't get enough food to eat. I don't like that. You pay $75 for filet mignon. And I say, what is this filet mignon on here? And what happens? You get a chunk of beef about this big. You get those same 2 asparagus that I saw on TV on the side. You got a tomato, looks like it's a wheel going over the top. They got a strip of orange at the bottom. It looks like waves. Then they put some chocolate around the sides. And they put a little dust of powder. Ooh, it looks so pretty. But hell, where's my food? Where's my food? I don't want a pretty painting on my plate. Give me some food up in here. But no, $75 for that. But you know why they make it look so pretty? Research showed there was one big reason why anybody would override their satiety center. The number one reason is how food looks. This is why they spend so much money decorating up a restaurant, decorating up the buffet line, decorating up your plate. As long as the food looks good, you don't even realize you're being scammed. $75 for a big little chunk of meat like that, man. That ain't no food. Like, no way. I like that hole-in-the-wall mom and pop joint. You know, got that one ladder still swinging from the ceiling. They ain't fixed it in 20 years. You walk in there, hey, Mom, when y'all fix that ladder? Well, baby, you know, when we get some money, we're going to fix it right up. What can I help you with? She's back there, got a stocking cap up, smoking her favorite cigar. I'm like, Mama, just hook me up with that thing right here in the middle. You don't even know what it is. All you know is it tastes good. And boom, blat, right all over your plate. $2.99. Mom, way to hook it up. There it is. You're good. You're good because you got a big old plate of something, and it felt good when you got done eating. $2.99 instead of paying $75 for a little chunk of something that you don't even know what it is. You know, if I watch like Channel 9 News, you know, there's a food critic. They start describing the food. And this pate, this and this foie la, I have no idea. I don't even know what man is talking about. I'm looking on the plate. I say, dude, I still only see 2 shrimp. 2 shrimp. Don't tell me foie nothing. Foie la la to that kitchen. Give me some more shrimp on this plate. 2 shrimp. You got all this fancy description. That ain't gonna fill me up. Come on. You know, weird thing happened when I came to America. Now, you know, in Nigeria, we have a different culture. In our culture, man, the more food you eat at somebody's house, the more of a compliment it is to the wife or woman who cooked that food. In fact, in Nigeria, if you went to a man's house and you didn't even finish the first plate his wife served you, you've just insulted his wife. Well, I can tell you right now, no man in Nigeria can ever say I've insulted his woman. Because I kill that first plate with no problem. I'm on that second or third one. All right, just good it. And then I come to America. I'm thinking everything's still the same. Man, my parents used to take us all to friends' houses. We'd get all piled into this little Volkswagen, station wagon. We show up, and they bring out the food, right? So the woman would bring out a plate of, some beef right in front of me. So I'm thinking, that's my plate. I didn't know it was for everybody. She put it in front of me. I'm like, oh, good, I can get started. I took that fork and dug in, man. Just killing that beef. And then I'm almost done. She walks in with the mashed potatoes. And then she's looking around, where'd all the beef go? I'm like, oh, that was for everybody? Oh, my bad, I'm sorry. I done eaten almost the whole plate. After a while, man, all my mom's friends said, Angie, don't bring your kids to my house. They're eating up everything in sight. So my mom pulled us together and said, kids, Americans are kind of funny. Really? Yeah. They play with food. They pretend they're not hungry. Really? They pretend they're not hungry? I'm like, I'm coming from Nigeria. We're happy to see food. You guys down here pretending you're not hungry? She said, yeah. When somebody offers you a lot of food, just pretend you're not hungry. Just take like one slice. I'm like, Ma, this ain't going to work. This ain't going to work. So you know the solution we came up with? Take us to Mickey D's before we go out to your friend's house. Because I ain't going to sit there and pretend I'm not hungry. That's hard for me. So we go to Mickey D's or Burger King, eat burgers, fries, shakes, everything. Woo, we'll be full. And then we show up. And then they bring out the beef. Oh, I'll just take one slice. And we all look at each other. Yeah, right. Everything's cool now, right? I'm like, man, I can't be playing that game with food. So my point to students is this. Don't invite me over to your house unless I get to eat. Don't put no food in front of me if you want me to pretend I'm not hungry. I ain't playing that game. Put the food there, it's likely to disappear. All right? Then I'll say thank you for inviting me over. All right? I got no problem with it. I remember years ago, back in college, a buddy of mine, two buddies of mine were Korean. So we decided, let's take a trip to the East Coast, just out of the blue. So we took a trip to the East Coast. We stopped at one girl's house, dropped her off in Philadelphia. And we had breakfast. Then we went to another guy's house in Washington, and we had lunch. And this was a Korean woman. So she started cooking. We all were sitting in the kitchen. She started cooking, and she brought something out, and we started eating, first course. After a while, she brought another one out. We're just eating. I'm like, oh, man, this is good. This is good. After about 45 minutes, my two buddies got up and went to the living room. I said, no, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to stay hanging right here. So Mom bringing out third course, fourth course. Man, she's working up a sweat. I'm like, no, Mom, keep going. Go ahead. Keep going. Fifth course. So I was chowing down like you wouldn't believe it, man. I'm having a good time. Then my friends come in about 2 hours later. I'm still sitting at that table eating. And they said, hey, is that you done yet? No. Let me just finish this plate right here. And then the mom looks at it, say, oh, you got good fan. You bring your fan home. He eat good. He eat good. I say, Ma, don't even worry about it. Me and you next spring break with me right here in the kitchen. You ain't got no problem with me, man. See, it was the same in her culture. The more you eat, that's the more of a compliment to her. I got no problem complimenting you, Ma. Keep cooking. I got it covered. All right. Everybody understand this chart? I mean, there's a lot of information here. The RBC connection, exercise physiology. Okay, very important. So now we know our first lab value for any glucose problem. Everybody understand why it's going to be a hemolytic anemia. So that way we know what cells are going to be affected the most. And then the organ that's going to be affected the most will be which one, Monica? The organ that will be affected the most will be which one, Dan? So the cells will be affected, RBCs will be affected first, but the organ will be affected the most, Dan says, is brain, and after that, heart, and after that, the kidney. All right? All I'm doing is bringing in the RBCs into our profile now. Okay? All right, so now we can go through glycolysis. Let's see, I need a volunteer. Dan, you're my volunteer, man. Shouldn't have twitched, man. Shouldn't have twitched. All right. The most active catabolic pathway in your body. In every cell in your body, especially muscles, glycolysis is catabolic. But in the liver, it's actually anabolic. Most biochemistry books don't say this. And I learned it the hard way because I thought I had them right, found out later. I missed them all. Okay? Because then I looked back and I remembered the questions I had in the boards, on my boards kept saying, you know, whatever they were asking me, they always say, in the liver. And I'm like, what? In the liver? Well, Lippercott said, I didn't know it was totally opposite in the liver. Be careful, folks. I'm just telling you, I learned the hard way. I thought that Lippercott said it's catabolic. In the liver, it's anabolic. Totally opposite. Okay? All right, so it's glycolysis. The catabolic state is controlled by sympathetic system. Second messenger, therefore, has to be cyclic-AMP. So see, we can connect our second messenger in here. Hormones, epinephrine and glucagon. So they ask for hormonal connection. Now you know it. How do we use energy? Just showing you again the timeline. We've said it many times. Again, I want that visual to register for you before we get started. Then, here we go. Glucose shows up to a cell. When it shows up to a cell, let's say in muscle cells, because they're starving, the first thing the cell does is use ATP to phosphorylate it into glucose 6-phosphate. Dan, how you going to name that enzyme, man? First name will be glucose. Last name will be? No, no, no. Look at the list. No guessing. Which one uses ATP to phosphorylate? Kinase. Name the whole thing. Glucokinase. Now remember, keep the names in front of you, folks, or mark it. I don't want any guessing. Okay? It takes time to get used to the last name. So this is not about trying to trip you up or see how much you know. I want you to learn the pattern. Okay? All right, so glucokinase, or if you want to just use a generic enzyme, we say hexokinase. Hexokinase will work on any 6-carbon sugar. Now, this glucokinase or hexokinase step, Rashmi, is considered very important or regulatory simply because once you phosphorylate a glucose or any sugar, it is now trapped within the cell. Why is it trapped, Rashmi is asking himself? Because if phosphorylated, it's dragging a lot more water than when it was coming in. Everybody understand that? That means it cannot go out now. If it cannot go out, it has to go straight ahead into the reaction. Everybody understand? They love to ask, what's the importance of this first step? It's not rate limiting, but it's important for this reason. Okay? Because otherwise, remember, if you had 10 particles on the outside, only 5 would come in. Well, I want all 10 to come in. Well, make sure you keep phosphorylating them. That way you create a gradient for them to keep coming in. Everybody understand? This is just illustrating all the stuff you've been learning. Okay, but I want to show you it's just a compilation of all the basic concepts we've been talking about. All right, so hexokinase or glucokinase will phosphorylate glucose to glucose 6-phosphate. Well, hexokinase is found everywhere in your body, but glucokinase is found in only 2 places. Now, I could just tell you the 2 places, but let me explain how you figure it out. Glucokinase has a very high Km for glucose. Bartholin, what does that tell you about its affinity? Glucokinase has a very high Km, low affinity. Remember, inverse relationship. Everybody got that? Well, if you're an enzyme with low affinity, do you want to be around high or low substrate concentration? If you're an enzyme with a low affinity, do you want to be around a lot of substrate or a little substrate? A lot of substrate. Does that make sense to everyone? Well, the only 2 places where you have tons of glucose is liver and then the pancreas right after a meal. That's how to remember. The only 2 places with glucokinase. Not even between meals, folks. Be careful. That's a trap. It's right after the meal. That's when a lot of glucose goes to the pancreas to stimulate insulin production. See? Okay, so liver and pancreas after a meal have glucokinase. Everywhere else, you find hexokinase. Well, Brendan, if I were to ask you, therefore, hexokinase has to have a very low Km for glucose. What does that tell you about its affinity? It's going to be very high. Well, Brandon, let's take it a step further. If I were to ask you what organ in your body would you have the lowest Km in hexokinase, what organ would have the lowest Km? The brain. Why? I don't get it. High affinity for glucose. Why is it going to be the brain? All right, because the brain is the most important organ to protect, even when your glucose is 10 or 20. Guess who can still extract glucose out of blood? The brain first, the heart second, the kidney third. Which means, folks, it's just a nice little slick question. They'll pick an enzyme out of the blue and ask you, where would you find the lowest Km? It's the same question. It just means what organ is the most important. I don't care what enzyme you're talking about. The brain will always be the most important. That means I'm picking the same things all the time. Okay? Everybody understand that so far? Sakchai? Well, they're not the most important. Heck, they lice in no time flat, so they can't be the most important. Yeah. The brain is more important, so you got to protect him first. Okay? All right. That's why when somebody's hypoglycemic, think about a diabetic. Sometimes they become hypoglycemic from their medication. How come they don't get brain damage? This is the reason. The brain has the highest affinity for almost everything. Okay? All right. Now we got glucose 6-phosphate, and it's going to get isomerized to fructose 6-phosphate. Who's working with me? Dan. Name that enzyme. Glucose 6-phosphate is going to be isomerized to fructose 6-phosphate. Glucose 6-phosphate isomerase. That didn't hurt that much, did it, Dan? No. All you got to do is just know how to do it. You just got to hear yourself do it a few times, and then you get comfortable. So if you want to make it all one word, it go like phosphoglucoisomerase. Same thing. But remember, just if you name it by itself, glucose 6-phosphate isomerase, you'll still see the answer. Phosphoglucoisomerase. It's just a way to make it one long word. Okay? Any questions about this place so far? Janice, now I'm at fructose 6-phosphate. And guess what I'm going to do? Fructose 6-phosphate, I'm going to add ATP to make it into fructose 1,6-diphosphate. How would you name that enzyme? Name it again. Phosphofructokinase, that's fine. Or fructose 6-phosphate kinase, very good. Or PFK1 for short. PFK1, Janice, is the rate-limiting enzyme of glycolysis. If he's the rate-limiting enzyme, he's either fastest or slowest one. He's the slowest one. What's this kinetic curve look like? Linear, flat, or sigmoidal? Sigmoidal. Remember, anything rate-limiting is allosteric, cooperativity, sigmoidal, all the time. That means we need to know the allosteric activator and inhibitor. Remember I said pay attention to that. You got to know it. All right? Allosteric activator for PFK1. Let me show you how to deduce it. So, Janice, since this guy is the slowest one, let's say you're just sedentary watching TV. You're not moving around that fast, are you? Okay. Then PFK1 can keep up with you. Make sense so far? But let's say you suddenly jump to your feet and say, I'm going to run 6 miles. Okay? All right? PFK1 can't keep up with you anymore. If PFK1 cannot keep up with you, Janice, what's going to build up within the cell? Was that fructose 6-phosphate, right? All right, so if fructose 6-phosphate is going to build up, that's going to stimulate the alternative pathway and get phosphorylated to fructose 2,6-diphosphate. That means you're just going to phosphorylate it. And then, Janice, tell me how you would name that enzyme. What's that? PFK2, exact same name because they're doing the exact same reaction. So phosphofructokinase 2. See, there's your allosterism. Remember, 2 or more different proteins interacting is allosterism, cooperativity. So that means, Janice, whenever you're sedentary, PFK1 is the only one that's working. Why? Because he's slow enough to keep up with you. But once you start exercising, both of them are active. Why? Because you want to turn it into fructose 2,6-diphosphate so that this becomes the allosteric activator of PFK1. See how slick that is, Faisal? I mean, the body is so well organized. The biochemistry of things is so well organized. That's why if you understand this, once you can see it in your own mind, and that's why when I do this, I try to see, why would the body be doing this or this or this? And now I can see it. This is every living human being, folks. I don't have to look it up again because you're white, black, Chinese, fat, short, tall. Doesn't matter. I bet you it's the same thing in everyone. Okay? The disease name will be different, but I bet you the pathways are still the same. Okay? So whenever you're inactive, sedentary, PFK1 is the only one that's working. So when you're asleep, relaxing, resting, PFK1. Once you start exercising, PFK1 and PFK2 are both active because you need fructose 2,6-diphosphate to speed up PFK1. Everybody understand? Everybody understand so far? All right. Yes, sir.
So does that mean during exercise, if they say rate-limiting enzyme is both PFK1 and PFK2?
Yeah, but it's still going to be PFK1. Still PFK1. Okay? But they might ask you if one or both are active during exercise. It's both. Okay? All right, everybody with me so far? All right, now I get fructose 1,6-diphosphate. Fructose 1,6-diphosphate, I'm at a crossroads. I'm going to split it in half into 2, 3 carbon molecules. Split it in half. And fructose is an aldol, so that's why they generically just say aldolase A. Aldolase A will split fructose, which is an aldol, in half. Remember, if it adds ACE at the end, that means it's using water to just cut it in half. Now you got dihydroxyacetone phosphate, or DHAP for short. Now you got glyceroldehyde 3-phosphate, or G3P for short. That means I now have 2 3-carbon molecules. Everybody with me? Okay? The problem is this. DHAP can become another G3P or vice versa. Which means, for the rest of the way, Joseph, you got to now understand I'm working with 2 molecules. Does everybody understand? That means for our calculations, a lot of students forget. Because when they ask you to calculate something, they forget. There's actually 2 molecules going down on the second half of glycolysis. Does everybody understand? I've taken 1 6-carbon sugar, and now just cut it in half to 2 3-carbon sugars. So I got 2 glyceroldehyde 3-phosphates going down. Does everybody understand that at this point? Everybody with me? All right. Now, what do we do with DHAP? DHAP, dihydroxyacetone phosphate, is used in glycerol 3-phosphate shuttle. We'll be seeing that tomorrow. DHAP is also used in triglyceride synthesis. You see why that's important to know tomorrow. So 2 things we use DHAP for. Triglyceride synthesis and as a shuttle. Basil.
Which one is the allosteric inhibitor or inhibitor for?
Good point. Allosteric inhibitor for PFK1 is citrate. You'll see why tomorrow. Okay. So fructose 2,6-diphosphate is the allosteric activator. Citrate is the allosteric inhibitor. So again, DHAP for 2 things. Glycerol 3-phosphate shuttle, and then using triglyceride synthesis. Got it okay so far, Tatiana? Janice? Okay? All right. Well, here's this one then, Tatiana. 2 glyceroldehyde 3-phosphates, then go to glyceroldehyde 1,3-diphosphate, and I see a cofactor. NADH is made. How are you going to name this enzyme whenever there's a cofactor involved? Glyceroldehyde 3-phosphate dehydrogenase, she says with immense confidence. She said, I got it down packed, Dr. Francis. All right. Remember I said, anytime you see a cofactor, somebody's about to lose a hydrogen. Okay? Dehydrogenase. Glyceroldehyde 3-phosphate dehydrogenase, FERDI, has a sulfur in its active site. If it does have a sulfur in its active site, what's the amino acid for that? FERDI. Anytime you hear sulfur, what amino acid are you hearing, Tony? No, it's positive charge. James? When you hear sulfur, you hear what amino acid? Cysteine. So that tells you that glyceroldehyde 3-phosphate dehydrogenase has a cysteine in its active site. Makes sense, Brendan? Well, it turns out that the toxic chemical called mercury blocks that sulfur. So whenever you have mercury poisoning, guess what? The pathway will stop right here. We have a problem here, Melanie, because so far I've used up 2 ATPs. I haven't made any ATPs yet. That means I have absolutely no delta G for running glycolysis so far. You follow me? That means if you use mercury to stop the pathway right here, what cells in your body will feel the effects first? RBCs, she says. What organ will be affected the most? The brain followed by. The heart followed by. The kidney, and the most common cause of death will be, thank you, heart failure in his house. So how do I know they weren't mercury poisoning to be the answer? It's by what you ate. All right, mercury toxicity, adults get it by eating canned tuna. Well, I'm geographically challenged. I already admitted that. The first time I ever said something about tuna, I said it's some lake that, no, I think I said some ocean or a lake, I don't know. And then somebody said, man, tunas don't swim around in lakes. I'm like, really? I didn't know that. Anyway, obviously he knew about tuna. Boy, about tuna. But again, folks, they could care less if you know what ocean or lake a tuna swims in. The key is the person eats tuna and gets sick, I'm picking mercury poison. Whether it came from a lake, or ocean, or a little river down the road, I'm still clicking anyway. Okay? All right. So mercury toxicity, how do children get it? By biting into a thermometer. You know all these games you buy at Toys R Us. Fake this, fake that, fake that. Would you believe they put real mercury in the doggone thermometers? And so little Joey drinks the mercury. Real mercury. Now, you guys been hearing about the mercury connection to autism, right? You know, MMRs. Well, they found out only the MMRs that were made with mercury or tainted with mercury are the ones associated with autism. But if you eat mercury, yes, you can get autism. So now they tell pregnant moms, do not eat any more than 1 canned tuna a week because, you know, we're afraid of how much mercury she might get. Okay? All right, so again, RBC is affected first. Low energy state is the scenario, so we can figure out all the problems. It's the history that tells me the answer, that they want mercury poisoning. Everybody understand mercury poisoning? Everybody got that? All right, so mercury toxicity. Hey, wait a minute, Nicole. I see NADH. N it stands for niacin. Niacin is what vitamin? B3 sounds better. So niacin is B3. B3 deficiency. What's the name of that disease? The name of that disease, Tamir? Pellagra. What's the clue for pellagra, Tamir? The 4 Ds. Remember that? And what disease presents just like pellagra, PJ? Heart and ups, and that's because of defective renal transport of what amino acid? Tryptophan, which is used to make what neurotransmitter? Serotonin, and the breakdown product of serotonin is 5-HIA. She redeemed herself. All right. Remember now, for the next week and a half, folks, I'm going to be drilling you. You don't know when I'm coming at you with a question. Be on your toes and drill your clues. Okay? Because that's how they're going to, you don't know how they're going to answer the question. It looks like a biochemistry pathway, but they didn't ask you about the disease. You don't know. All right, so that's pellagra. And then heart and ups. You heard it. You see it. Okay, now you know. All right, glycerolide 1,3-diphosphate can go to glycerolide 2,3-diphosphate. Notice all I did was transfer the phosphate group from carbon 1 to carbon 2. What would be the last name of that enzyme, Cammie? When you transfer a side chain from one carbon to another. Look at your list. No guessing. Speak. It would end with mutase, so name it. Right here. Name it. Glyceraldehyde. Glyceraldehyde. Diphosphomutase. That's it. That's it, folks. Just follow the rules. Don't try to guess anything right until you get used to the last name. So I'm not testing you for testing you. I'm just trying to program your brain so that after a while you'll know the last names and how to put it together. Okay? Well, glyceraldehyde, hey, wait a minute. Eros, this is 2,3-DPG, man. Oh, my goodness. That's going to shift the dissociation curve to what side? To the right, to the right, to the right. Remember, increase in everything except pH, to the right. Hemoglobin F, Eros, has a high or low affinity for 2,3-DPG.
It has a high affinity.
The other way.
Has a low affinity.
Yeah, that's right. Low affinity for this means high affinity for oxygen. That's what we're remembering. Okay? Everybody understand? All right, 2,3-DPG. You know, in the old days, if you left blood on a shelf for too long, 2,3-DPG would all degenerate. And then after you transfuse it into somebody, there's no more 2,3-DPG. What would happen to the oxygen affinity if there's no more 2,3-DPG, Tony? Excuse me? What would happen to oxygen affinity if there's no more 2,3-DPG to bind the hemoglobin? The affinity of, I can't hear you? No. The affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen is lowered by 2,3-DPG. So if you have no 2,3-DPG, oxygen will not come off that hemoglobin. You understand me? It goes to hemoglobin F ability now. Yeah. Okay? So 2,3-DPG, if it degenerated while it was sitting on the shelf, after you transfused it into somebody, they would go into heart failure and die. And of course, that'd be shocking to the doctor. What? We just finished transfusion, then he's dead a few hours later. That's because the oxygen would come off the hemoglobin. And we didn't know that. That's why in the old days they used to put a chemical in there called ACD, acid citrate dextrose. Notice dextrose, and everybody understand, Andre? Dextrose means you just give the RBC sugar to make its own 2,3-DPG. Currently, however, we now use a chemical called inosine to do the same thing. So they'll ask you, how do we preserve the shelf life of blood in the blood bank? Currently, we're using inosine. If you did not add that to the RBC and 2,3-DPG got depleted, the patient would die after you transfuse. Benish, 1 unit of packed cells will raise your hemoglobin by how much? 3 to 6 hematocrit. How many grams? 1 to 2. Remember, it's a 1 to 3 ratio. All right, so inosine. Everybody understand what inosine is for? Eros.
So confused how you, I see the G13BP and 2,3BP.
Yeah, all we did,
How do I know I'm using carbon and actually what is it?
because all you're doing, look at it. The only difference between here and here is 1 became a 2. That's it. That's how you know you moved a phosphate from number 1 position to 2 position. Anytime you move a side chain from one carbon to another, that's called a mutase. That was the definition of a mutase. All right? Understand it so far, Miguel? Rebecca? Got it? All right, so now, the second part of glycolysis is very important. Why? Because so far we have no delta G for glycolysis. We've burnt up 2 ATPs. We haven't made anything. The second half of glycolysis, folks, in case they ask you what's the reason for it, is to create delta G. So that means, Rebecca, you follow me now. Glycerolide 1,3-diphosphate. You got 2 huge phosphate groups, PO43 minus, separated by only 1 carbon. Uh-oh. That means there's entropy if somebody would just leave. And that's why it's easy to get one to leave to go down to 3-phosphoglycerate. When that happens, you see that? ATP comes off. But remember, that's 2 of them because it's 2 molecules coming down. Well, Rebecca, if I use up 2 ATPs for the first time of glycolysis, and so far I've just made back 2 ATPs, what's my delta G so far? 0. Is glycolysis favorable yet? Will it be spontaneous yet? No. Remember, it's got to be negative. So far I've got 0. That means I must continue. Everybody with me? All right. 3-phosphoglycerate, Rebecca. 3-phosphoglycerate gets turned into 2-phosphoglycerate. All you do is move a phosphate from a 3 to 2 position. How do you name that enzyme? Mutase. She's all over it. 3-phosphoglycerol mutase, or just phosphoglycerol mutase. Either way. Very good. All right. Now, I've showed you how to name 90% of enzymes. Now, let me teach you how to name the other 10%. Okay? So far, every enzyme we've named has followed the rule that I gave you. We didn't have to guess on anything. Well, right here. The other 10% of enzymes, we name it after the product. Why do we name it after the product? Because we want to bring attention to it because it's something very unique. And that's not my reasoning. That's straight out of biochemistry books. Just so nobody says I made that one up. All right? They name it after the product when they want to bring attention to it. Here's why they want to bring attention to this one. This is an enol group. Okay? So this one is called enolase. So it's named after the enol group. Enol group right here, see that? Carboxyl group next to a phosphate group. Look at all these oxygens around each other. That's a lot of entropy. That means this structure will be happy if somebody left. And that's why in the very next step, one of them does leave. And guess what? I get another 2 ATPs. That means in this very last step, folks, is the actual delta G for glycolysis. The very last step. So Malika, pyruvate is very important, so we need to bring attention to him. So if I want to bring attention to him, I got to say pyruvate. And what's going to be the last name? Pyruvate what? Oh, no, look at the reaction now. Don't guess it. That's the ATP. Kinase. So pyruvate kinase is the last regulatory step of glycolysis. Because there is where we get the 2 ATPs, that is the delta G, the driving force for all of glycolysis. Your body runs glycolysis to get those 2 ATPs. That means before you send any of this stuff into the mitochondria where you get a ton more ATPs, I got ATPs I can start using. That's why your body likes running glycolysis. You get energy right away without waiting. Enolase is a very important enzyme because whenever you have fluoride poisoning, we talked about it on day 1, fluoride poisoning can block enolase. Remember, bright white shiny teeth and bones was the great clue for it. But it's still a low energy state, folks, so nothing's going to change. So to summarize glycolysis, don't write, just listen. Here it comes. Going up into the cortex, and it goes like this. All right, glycolysis is the most active cycle in your body. It's the most important catabolic process that goes on in your body. Everywhere in your body, especially the muscles, it is catabolic except in the liver. Who runs it hormonally? Epinephrine and glucagon. It's sympathetic, second messenger, cyclic AMP. That means if you want to be active, phosphorylate it, and it'll run straight ahead. Glucose comes to a cell, especially like muscle. And the muscle says, I need that for energy. The first thing you want to do is phosphorylate it. Why do you want to do that? Because when you phosphorylate it, now it has to go straight into the pathway. It cannot leave anymore because it is too polar and dragging too much water. And that's why hexokinase and glucokinase step is very important. Well, hexokinase is found everywhere in your body, but glucokinase is found in only 2 places. Because glucokinase has a very low affinity for glucose, i.e. high Km for glucose. That means you're only going to find it around high substrate. Where would that be? Liver, pancreas, after a meal. Okay, that's it, nowhere else. As far as the highest affinity for glucose, which means lowest Km, is going to be found in the brain, followed by the heart, followed by the kidney. After you make glucose 6-phosphate, you isomerize it to fructose 6-phosphate and isomerase. Then you phosphorylate again to fructose 1,6-diphosphate. Then you find out PFK1 is the rate-limiting enzyme of glycolysis. If he's the rate-limiting enzyme, he's the slowest. Kinetic curve is sigmoidal, which means I need an allosteric activator and inhibitor. How do I create it? If you're sedentary, PFK1 is the only one who's active. Once you become active, PFK2 becomes active, and fructose 6-phosphate goes down this way to become fructose 2,6-diphosphate, who then doubles back and activates PFK1 and speeds him up. Which means when you're sedentary, PFK1 is the only one who's active. When you're exercising, both of them are active. Okay? And then everything speeds up. Once you get this fructose 1,6-diphosphate, it'll run ahead and activate pyruvate kinase, speed him up some. Why? This is the only place in biochemistry that we know of, they call it feed forward. Remember the rule in physiology is feed back, not feed forward. But this is the only place in biochemistry, glycolysis. Now the way I make sense of it, this is the last regulatory step. Once you get a ton of this, he goes ahead and says, hey man, you better get ready. Here's a bunch of substrate coming your way. Okay? Then you cut it in half to DHAP and G3P by aldolase A. Then G3P now has doubled. I got 2 of them. DHAP becomes another one. Then I go down and become glycerol high 1,3-diphosphate using NAD to do it. We call that step a substrate level phosphorylation, meaning you phosphorylated G3P without a kinase. That doesn't happen anyplace else in your body. Okay? And then we stopped here at glycerol high 1,3-diphosphate and made 2,3-DPG. We noted a shift the curve to the right decreases hemoglobin's oxygen affinity so you can drop it off to the tissues. At this spot right here, we know that this is a dehydrogenase. That dehydrogenase has a sulfur inactive site. A sulfur means cysteine. What can inactivate it? Mercury. So mercury poisoning, how do children get it? Bite into a thermometer. How do adults get it? Canned tuna. So for a pregnant woman, don't eat more than 1 canned tuna a week because we know that mercury has been tied to autism. Then we also know that the cofactor, NADH, made from niacin. Niacin is B3. B3 deficiency is called pellagra. Pellagra, the clue, 4 Ds. And then we have heart nups. Heart nups is just like pellagra, but it's from defective renal transport of tryptophan, which we use to make niacin. So you get the exact same disease. 2,3-DPG will deplete out of blood if you leave it on a shelf for too long. So in the old days, we used to put ACD, acid citrate dextrose, to replenish it. Currently, we use inosine to do the same thing. Otherwise, if you transfuse their blood in somebody, they'll die right afterwards, go into heart failure. Now I got glycerol high 1,3-diphosphate. I'm going to knock off 1 phosphate group to make 3 phosphoglycerate. Now I've got 2 ATPs. But that balances the 2 ATPs I've already used, and so far my delta G is 0, so I continue. 3 phosphoglycerate then mutates to 2 phosphoglycerate. 2-phosphoglycerate then goes to PEP by an enzyme called enolase, which is inhibited by fluoride. So fluoride poisoning, bright white, shiny teeth and bones is your clue. And then finally, PEP goes to pyruvate. Pyruvate kinase is the last regulatory step in which you get 2 ATPs, which now serve as the driving force, or delta G, for glycolysis. Any questions about glycolysis? Say what? Oh, can I repeat that? Right. Oh, my goodness. All right, everybody clear about this? Now, yes. Substrate level phosphorylation, yeah, right here. Which means you're phosphorylating something without the use of a kinase or phosphorylase. This is the only place where that happens. Now, the other guys, the newer guys, biochemists, made an argument against that term. If you break down that term, substrate level phosphorylation, it can also mean making ATP while you're making substrates without entering electron transport. So that means the 2 spots where we made ATP, they now think those should be substrate level phosphorylations as well. All right, so anyway, what I see is if an older guy wrote the question, this is the answer right here. They say substrate level phosphorylation. If a newer guy wrote the question, it'd be one of the other 2 kinases. I've never seen the 2 mix. And they know that. Okay? ACD was put into RBCs to allow them to regenerate their own 2,3-DPG. But now we use inosine to do that. It just lengthens the shelf life of blood. All right, so now, Kathia.
That extra step from the F60 in the
Here?
Yeah.
Right.
How does that go again? So is it the buildup of
Yeah, the buildup of fructose 6-phosphate will automatically stimulate this alternative. Right. Yep. All right, while the muscles are running glycolysis, who's sending them glucose? That pathway is called gluconeogenesis. And that's how I know gluconeogenesis is the second catabolic pathway to talk about. They're all connected, folks, but I want you to see how they're connected so you can see how they just walk in line. That way you don't just memorize pathways out of sequence and then it has no meaning after a while. So gluconeogenesis is going to feed glycolysis because muscles can't make glucose. The liver is the one that makes glucose. Gluconeogenesis occurs primarily in the liver, 90%, and in adrenal cortex, the other 10%. Again, controlled by epinephrine and glucagon, the 2 sympathetic hormones. Second messenger is still cycling AMP. If you want to make it active, phosphorylate it. So all the stuff we've known before, we apply it again. Okay? So gluconeogenesis is one of the 3 pathways that occurs in the cytoplasm as well as the mitochondria, Thomas. Who are the other 2? Gluconeogenesis is one of the 3 pathways that occurs both in cytoplasm and mitochondria. Who are the other 2 pathways? Do you remember, Diana? No, glycolysis is the only catabolic that goes on completely in the cytoplasm. But I gave you 3 pathways that go on in both compartments. Otherwise, synthesis, you say cytoplasm. Breakdown, you say mitochondria. Cami, the other 2. Heme synthesis and urea cycle. And gluconeogenesis. The only 3 pathways that go on in both compartments. All right, so gluconeogenesis goes like this. Let's see who's going to help me here. Fazil, you help me, man. Nah, Tara, help me.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
At the end of glycolysis, we have total of 4 ATPs.
No, 2 ATPs. 2 ATPs. Yep. All right, so Tara, here we go. When the liver gets the signal that the muscles are hungry and need energy, the first thing it does is close off the mitochondria so that pyruvate cannot enter Krebs cycle. When the liver gets the signal, that means you just jump to your feet and exercise. So epinephrine and glucagon show up at the liver. That's a signal. Uh-oh, you must be exercising. And then he says, okay, I'm going to shut off the mitochondria so pyruvate cannot enter Krebs cycle. Understand me so far? But pyruvate has a back door that epinephrine and glucagon didn't know anything about. For gluconeogenesis, pyruvate will sneak into the mitochondria and be turned into oxaloacetate. All you do is add carbon dioxide to it. Pyruvate going to oxaloacetate, add carbon dioxide. How are you going to name that enzyme? You can look at your list now, no guessing. Do you understand? Pyruvate carboxylate. That's what I'm saying. Look at your list. No, don't let the mind start guessing. Just follow the rules. here's a substrate, and what you did to it is add carbon dioxide, pyruvate carboxylase. If I ask you for what vitamin is a cofactor for that enzyme, Tara, you would say what? It's called biotin. For any carboxylase, just say biotin. All right, pyruvate carboxylase is the rate-limiting enzyme of glycolysis. Gluconeogenesis. If it's a rate-limiting enzyme, Tara, is it the fastest or slowest? It's the slowest. What's its kinetic curve look like? Is it flat? Is it linear, flat, or sigmoidal? Sigmoidal for every rate-limiting enzyme. So I need an allosteric activator, which we know we're going to find out tomorrow is acetyl-CoA. Allosteric activator. Acetyl-CoA. You'll see why that makes sense tomorrow. Allosteric inhibitor, glucose. Does that make sense to everyone? If you have plenty of glucose, do you want more gluconeogenesis? The answer is no. So glucose should shut this off. Does everybody understand that? You understand that, Chris? You understand that, SOB? Activator is acetyl-CoA. Okay? All right, so Tara, I got pyruvate going to oxaloacetate. Now I'm going to use my malate aspartate shuttle to shuttle this thing out of here. So on the way out, here's what you find. Oxaloacetate goes to aspartate. That enzyme is called AST. Aspartate transaminase. Now it goes out to the cytoplasm and goes back to being oxaloacetate. There's an AST out here as well. Do you understand so far? All right, now I got my oxaloacetate back. But I'm going to show you something from right here. Something so beautiful, because I can turn pyruvate into alanine by using an enzyme called ALT. Why, Tara? It turns out that viruses, when they attack your liver, they tend to attack the outside. That means the cell membrane. If you attack the cell membrane, Tara, that means whatever's in the cytoplasm has to leak out. Do you understand, Tara? How many ASTs are in the cytoplasm? One. How many ALTs are in the cytoplasm? One. That means whenever you got a viral hepatitis, AST and ALT go up, but it's never going to be 2 to 1. Does everybody understand that? Tara, I ask you again. When it comes to a chemical called alcohol, alcohol damages all membranes, including the mitochondrial membrane. If I damage the mitochondrial membrane, how many ASTs are in there? One in mitochondria, for a total of how many ASTs? 2. And how many ALTs? 1. That means whenever you have alcohol hepatitis, AST to ALT ratio, 2 to 1 or greater. Look it up in the books now. Oh, I think they got it from biochemistry, but it just gets passed around from journal to journal. Nobody looks it up to see where it came from. That's just what we always see. That's what you're going to hear when you get out there and practice. That's what we always see. No, that's not what we always see. It comes from biochemistry. That alcohol will destroy the mitochondrial membrane. This one right. Oh, hang on. Let me get my arrow. Alcohol, hang on, let me go through it again. Alcohol will destroy all membranes. That means the outer membrane, cell membrane up here, and the mitochondrial membrane here. So that means 2 ASTs will leak out, 1 ALT. That's why you see a 2 to 1 ratio or greater for alcohol hepatitis. Any other cause of hepatitis, especially viruses, they can only destroy the cell membrane out here. That means 1 AST, 1 ALT can leak out. That's why the ratio will never be 2 to 1 or greater. So that means anytime I see ALTs and ASTs, arrows, it means you have hepatitis. Do you understand me? And now I got to figure out why you have hepatitis, Nicole. If the AST to ALT ratio is greater than 2 to 1, your conclusion? That means he's been drinking alcohol. If it's less than 2 to 1, most likely a virus. Everybody understand? Cool.
Is it
Yes, sir.
dependent on the number of ASTs and ALTs?
That's correct. There's 2 sources.
I remember somewhere I thought that ALT is also greater than AST in one of the 2. I don't know.
No, can't be. All right, now, I know I have hepatitis when I see ASTs and ALTs elevated. Everybody agree? I know it's alcohol when AST to ALT is 2 to 1 or greater. Everybody agree? Now let me give you the other levels. The term hepatic necrosis. How do I know you have hepatic necrosis? When the ASTs and ALTs are in the thousands. That's the definition, hepatic necrosis. that just means you sloughed up a chunk of liver if it's up in the thousands. So we say hepatic necrosis. Okay? So you got to know the proper term based on the lab values. Okay? They won't set up a ratio for you, folks. You got to set up the ratio. They fool you guys with numbers. You know, they make this one a 70 and this one a 35. Well, it looks like a 2-to-1 ratio to me. See, that's my point. You think, oh, well, it's not that elevated. Hey, but did you see the ratio? And then they slide it right by you. That's why I say don't just read numbers. Interact with everything that you're reading. What does it mean to you? Okay? So that's hepatic necrosis. What? What about it? No. The AST, they'll give you a certain number. For the ALT, they'll give you another certain number. If you set up a ratio, if it's 2-to-1 or greater, that's alcohol doing that. Okay? All right, so we call it fulminant hepatitis or hepatic encephalopathy when you see symptoms of GABA. That means the ammonia is getting them now. That means when they start saying lethargic, sedated, somnolent, see that? Delirious, aha! Then I know they want me to pick hepatic encephalopathy as the answer. Okay? So hepatitis, hepatic necrosis. Now you know the definition for fulminant hepatitis or hepatic encephalopathy. And then finally, how do I know you have cirrhosis? I know you have cirrhosis, Maria, when the liver can't even do its basic functions, which are what? Albumin. So when albumin is low, you got cirrhosis. Second one, factor 7. Hey, is factor 7 intrinsic or extrinsic pathway, Mustafa? Which one? Extrinsic, and that's why prothrombin time, if it's elevated, you have cirrhosis. So again, the key is to attach it to something. There's got to be a connection, so you don't just memorize criteria, and this is just a list of details to memorize. Okay? Any questions on hepatitis in different levels? Everybody clear on these definitions? All right, yes.
With hepatic necrosis, so each mitochondria that's destroyed
We'll leak out another AST.
you have 2 in 1. So how will you get difference in thousands?
What do you mean in the thousands?
You said when you get
Just the total number will be in the thousands. Yeah.
the ratio is still
Yeah, the ratio can be less than 2-to-1 or it can be more than 2-to-1. The key is the numbers. The total is in the thousands. Yeah, the machine just counts how many ASTs that it sees. If it's in the thousands, I say, aha, hepatic necrosis. Okay? Everybody got that so far? Yes, Rebecca. Both. When both are in the thousands, yes. Then you call it hepatic necrosis. Everybody clear so far? So that, again, hepatitis, alcohol versus viral, hepatic necrosis, fulminant hepatitis or hepatic encephalopathy, and then cirrhosis. Those are 4 levels. Was that 5 levels? You got to know. Everybody clear about those? It's all over your exam now. Okay. Because there'll be statins, and then they ask you the same thing, and then you forget. I don't have to say statins. I just said any cause hepatitis, same thing. But you got to know the proper term when you look at those ASTs and ALT numbers to pick the right answer, so you get a point for it. All right.
Back to the pyruvate. Maybe I missed something, but you said during exercise the path for pyruvate.
Yeah, for pyruvate to go to Krebs cycle, you have to go straight down to acetyl-CoA. That's closed. Yeah, this is pyruvate sneaking in through a back door. Yeah, this is not the normal pathway. All right, so now PEP. Oh, sorry, oxaloacetate goes to PEP. What are we going to do? Phosphorylate it and remove a carbon dioxide at the same time. That's why they call it PEP carboxykinase. Remember, we already know the enol group is important, so you got to name it after him. PEP carboxykinase. Okay? And then everything is reversible, 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 reversible until you get to the rate limiting step again. Remember, important step, regulatory steps, you cannot reverse. So that means, Diana, to go from fructose 1,6-diphosphate to fructose 6-phosphate, how would you name that enzyme? No. Name the substrate. I haven't even heard the substrate yet. Here's the substrate right here. Fructose 1,6-diphosphate, and then I'm using water to chop off one of the phosphates. Let's look at your list. Whenever you're using water to chop off a bond, what was the name of that enzyme? No, just look at your notes. Which one did you write water next to? Hydrolase. All you do is add ACE at the end. So name it. Right. Or just say diphosphatase. Just putting ACE at the end tells me that you used water to do this. All right, so fructose 1,6-diphosphatase is the third enzyme I need to reverse things. And then, Diana, everything is fine, reversible here. And then you get to the last step that's regulatory. You can't reverse that. Now you're going to take glucose 6-phosphate, use water to chop off the last phosphate. How would you name that one? Glucose 6-phosphatase. That's all you got to do. Just try a few of them till you get comfortable. All right? Because, again, I know it's only if you say it a few times that you'll remember it versus my just telling you. It doesn't mean anything. The brain's got to form the pattern. That way then when you leave here, I know you use the same pattern again. All right, so in other words, you cannot say gluconeogenesis is the reverse of glycolysis because it is not. Why? Because you got four new enzymes you got to use. So be careful of that statement. Gluconeogenesis is not the reversal of glycolysis. Why? You got 4 new enzymes. So again, pyruvate carboxylase was rate limiting. Biotin was his cofactor. That turned pyruvate into oxaloacetate. And then we brought it back out. PEP carboxykinase turned it right back into PEP. And then everything started going backwards until you got to PFK1. So fructose 1,6-diphosphatase will go behind it. And then glucose 6-phosphatase goes behind hexokinase. That's gluconeogenesis. Any questions on gluconeogenesis? Any questions on gluconeogenesis? Yes?
The only irreversible steps are the last two?
No. The irreversible ones are hexokinase, PFK1, and pyruvate kinase. We had to use these 2 enzymes just to sneak behind pyruvate kinase. Yeah, you cannot reverse a regulatory step. It only goes in one direction. That's why I pointed those 3 out for you. Because on any